2 years after the events of Bloodgrave, Niko Bellic, who is now Agent 11 in the FIB's agent program, is sent with his FIB partner, Agent 14, to respond to a distress signal from an FIB safehouse. Upon arriving, they realise that classified FIB passcodes have been stolen and the culprit is attempting to escape. After giving chase and eliminating the suspect, however, Agent 11 discovers that the culprit transferred the classified passcodes to another person mid-chase. The security of the United States hangs in the balance. This is Grand Theft Auto: The Second Wave. Agent 11 and the director of the Liberty City division of the FIB, Claudia Angel, are thrown in front of the Attorney General and are directed to retrieve the passcodes using any means necessary. The Attorney General also notifies Agent 11 that, after the assignment is complete, he will be getting transferred to Los Santos in San Andreas. No ifs, no buts. On the way back to the FIB HQ, however, Claudia Angel receives information that the FIB is being hacked into from somewhere within the broker district of Liberty City. Before they can properly triangulate it, however, the FIB building is attacked and the bomber manages to escape. 12 hours later, Claudia Angel attends a memorial service for those who perished in the attack on the FIB building. She makes a promise to herself: she will find those responsible. Meanwhile, Nico and his fiancée, Kiki Jenkins, are spending some time together. They go out to a restaurant for a drink and to discuss the future. After some passive and neutral conversation, Nico mentions how he's being transferred to Los Santos in San Andreas after his current assignment is complete. Kiki, taken aback by this, is visibly upset. Nico is always dedicated to his duty as an FIB agent and never on them as a couple, she proclaims. A small argument breaks out. Nico wants her to come with him to Los Santos, but Kiki proclaims how their life together is here in Liberty City. Out of anger, Kiki hits Nico and leaves him. Their relationship is left hanging in the balance. The next day, both Agent 11 and 14 rendezvous with Director Angel to receive details of their assignment at the new temporary FIB base of operations. Their assignment? An FIB contact, Ronson, has gathered information on the hacker that originated in Broker. Her undercover operation has revealed the identity of said hacker. Nico is tasked with meeting their contact and to gather the intelligence, and then to arrest the individual behind the stolen passcodes. After being given an advanced pistol to use from the professor, Nico sets out to meet the broker contact. Sometime later, Nico arrives at the Irish bar in his own Banshee sports car. Kathy arrives via helicopter. Inside the pub, Kathy warns Nico that the person responsible is a Swedish terrorist who is being assisted by a rogue FIB agent. She has been undercover with him for 3 months and has gained his trust, as she reveals how he arrived in Liberty City on a fishing boat with a bullet in his leg. She helped him and now he wants revenge. The Swedish ultranationalist is seeking to gain access to a USB device that is locked securely in a hotel. This device holds valuable information that would wreak destruction on the country. After a subtle interrogation from Bellic, Kathy Ronson reveals that the rogue FIB operative who is helping this Swedish terrorist is Agent 27, otherwise known as Tony Ronson, the brother of Kathy. She also reveals that she was sent by Tony to stall Nico. Nico then forces Kathy to take him to her brother, but before they are able to, their vehicle is ambushed by Tony's men and both of them are kidnapped. 4 hours later, Tony Ronson takes Nico and Kathy to an ex-FIB safehouse in Alderney, where he confesses that he was the one who stole the passcodes and attacked the FIB building using them. He then goes on to outline his plan to Bellic. He will trade the classified FIB passcodes with the Swedish terrorist in return for access to every major financial account within Liberty City. Nico asks why. Why betray his country? Tony Ronson, clearly reveling in his wicked genius, explains how the law is broken within the United States and the system needs to change. The law failed him and now he is exacting his revenge. Meanwhile, Kathy, at the feet of her deranged brother, is being killed for betraying his cause. Ronson's goons take Nico outside and order him to get in the car and drive north. As he does, Nico hears a faint beeping sound, a bomb. Nico gets in the car, punches it into gear and races for the open ocean. Just before the bomb explodes, Nico jumps out and manages to escape near death. After Ronson's attempt to make Nico's death look like an accident fails, he escapes with the passcodes in hand. However, Nico returns to the safehouse and manages to find a forgotten letter inside with details of the meeting. He decides to follow and ambush the meet itself. Nico and the FIB manage to ambush the deal in the nick of time. Down the sniper scope, Nico notices Ronson trade the FIB passcodes over to the Swedish terrorist. A shootout then erupts in the middle of downtown Algonquin. As Agent Ronson is apprehended by Bellic, the buyer of the passcodes manages to get away before backup arrives on scene. Sometime later, Claudia Angel notifies Bellic, who is now driving home in his personal silver de Classe Vegero, that the buyer was identified as Albert Wave, a Swedish weapons specialist and ultranationalist. Wave was also seen renting a hotel room in the Majestic Hotel, the same hotel that Kathy mentioned to Nico regarding the destructive USB device. Nico is stunned. Everything is falling into place. Albert Wave is going to steal the USB device and use it to attack the United States, with the FIB passcodes giving him unlimited access to any secure computer system. Suddenly, a car smashes into Nico. It's Albert Wave. A huge car chase around the nighttime streets of Alderney then occurs, with Nico trying to escape Albert Wave, who is attempting to take him out. It ends with Nico's damaged Vegero narrowly avoiding an open area on the roof of a multi-storey car park, and Albert Wave's Huntley Sport flying off the roof of the building and crashing below. Wave escapes from the scene before Nico can apprehend him. The following morning, Nico arrives at the Majestic Hotel to investigate and spots Albert Wave leaving with the USB drive. A shootout in the hotel lobby then occurs, with Wave then narrowly escaping. Nico follows suit. The two engage in an intense foot chase through the streets of Algonquin. Albert steals a nearby car and races off to his destination, the old FIB HQ that Tony Ronson destroyed. Why? Because if he activated the USB drive through the FIB's secure servers, gaining access to said servers using the passcodes, he would have access to every major financial account in the United States, effectively giving him the power to collapse the entire US financial system at the click of a button. Albert Wave manages to break in and steal major funds from American corporations, over $400 billion worth, and then begins the process of a financial collapse, crashing the stock market and ridding accounts of funds. However, before further damage can be done, Nico arrives and stops Wave. After a further shootout, Albert takes the USB device and escapes. He races towards a nearby helicopter pad, and Nico follows closest behind. Both then end up in a fiery and intense helicopter chase. Both of them crash land at the Statue of Liberty, causing havoc along the island. With nowhere else to go, Nico manages to hunt Albert Wave down and stop him before he can leave the city with both the USB drive and the passcodes. Wave proclaims how arresting him solves nothing. The system needs changing, and he is the spark which will have started the fire. However, Nico has faith and is optimistic about the future. Wave's plan has failed. Albert then states, "You're a cop, and cops do not kill unarmed people." With one shot left in the chamber, Nico, thinking through his options, utters one line that spelled the end for Albert Wave. The name's Niko Bellic. I'm the law. Nico then kills Albert and retrieves both the passcodes and the USB drive. 3 days later, Nico meets with Claudia at the Civilization Committee building. She informs Nico that Albert Wave's actions caused brief but minimal financial damage to the country, and that all the funds have been returned to their rightful owners. The passcodes have been destroyed and new ones have been drafted, and the USB drive also has been destroyed for national security reasons. Nico is now content. They managed to avert a disaster. Claudia then reveals to Nico that she has been promoted to Chief Director of the FIB, and will be moving to Los Santos with Nico after her confirmation hearings. Nico congratulates Claudia. After gathering his supplies, Nico arrives at Liberty City International Airport, where Claudia is waiting and prepares to leave. Just before he does, Claudia bids him goodbye and wishes him well. Nico then boards the helicopter and flies out towards Los Santos, leaving his life in Liberty City behind, flying out to an undetermined future to begin the next chapter of his life. So that's the main story of Grand Theft Auto: The Second Wave. It is of course the sequel to Grand Theft Auto: Bloodgrave, the first film in the franchise, and of course we have to go over some highlights. What are the main things that we can take away from this movie? What are the main story highlights that really impact the franchise as a whole? The first one of course is, it's the first on-screen introduction to Claudia Angel, the regional director of the FIB in Liberty City, and a character who is a close ally of Niko Bellic, the protagonist. Claudia Angel is a really important character in the franchise, and she's in every single movie. Because of that, she plays a pivotal role, and this is her first proper on-screen introduction. Of course, it's then important to highlight that Nico and Alex, Agent 14, are working together during the pre-credit sequence. The two of them are really close friends and they have each other's backs, and you really get that sense in the pre-credits of the film. This is the first time we get to see them together, working together in the franchise. Another important point is the relationship breakdown between Nico and Kiki. Although this is not a main story element, it nevertheless has broad consequences for Nico, both as a character and for the franchise's overall story arc. In Bloodgrave, Nico and Kiki, they were together, but Nico underwent some traumatic experiences, as you might remember. And so because of that, their relationship is already damaged from that. And Kiki in this film, she's very disconnected from Nico. She's quite frustrated in a way. Nico is too dedicated to the job, he's too dedicated to duty rather than to her. So the relationship breakdown was really interesting and is a really pivotal story element of the second wave. The next important story highlight is that Kathy Ronson, the broker contact, is revealed to be the sister of Tony Ronson, an FIB agent who went rogue and collaborated with the primary antagonist, Albert Wave. In this film, Nico grew sympathetic to Kathy's situation. Clearly, she was scared and frightened of her brother, and her death, caused by Ronson, only fuels Nico's rage to bring him to justice, and it reminds him of why he is loyal to the FIB, to uphold justice and to stop the evil within the world. And this has long-lasting effects on both Nico and the franchise. The arrest of Tony Ronson is also a pivotal moment in the story. I mean, Tony Ronson, the agent who betrayed the FIB, is eventually arrested, of course, after Nico ambushes the trade-off between Ronson and Wave. This has pivotal consequences for the franchise because, as we all know, Tony Ronson makes another very important appearance as the primary villain in another upcoming Grand Theft Auto film. The killing of Albert Wave also is a very important story point to highlight. Unlike in the previous film, Bloodgrave, the antagonist's plan was more impactful to the entire population, rather than to a specific group of people. I mean, arguably, Albert Wave became closer to achieving his objective than Bloodgrave ever did. The killing of Wave then had consequences for both Nico, the FIB, and the entirety of the United States. And finally, of course, Nico's departure to Los Santos. This is arguably the most important element of the second wave. Nico's transfer to Los Santos changes the entire story of Agent 11. It changes who he is and what he does. As we'll explore in the next video for Forevermore, the third film and the sequel to the second wave, Nico's transfer to Los Santos isn't smooth, it isn't good, it doesn't have positive effects. He's brought in really in an emergency situation. Again, that move to Los Santos has both practical and, in a way, story impacts for the franchise. Now we turn to the action scenes and the action sequences of the second wave. Firstly, there's the opening car chase. I mean, this is one of the longest opening pre-credit sequences in the Agent 11 franchise. I think it stands at around 10 minutes or so. It's a very long introduction to the film, but that's done on purpose. It's meant to bring you into this new style of direction, which I'll talk about later. From the moment Nico enters the Sultan to the barge shootout beginning, that was all one take. It was completed in 3 attempts. We tried the car chase about 3 times, and as I said, we did it all in one take. From the moment he enters the Sultan to the moment the shootout begins, it is one take. It's the Sultan versus the Sultan RS that I think is the real giveaway from that opening car chase. It's a really intense, really in the moment, quite creative car chase. We go over a lot of terrain, different environments. Obviously, we start in Broker, narrow streets, into the train line, down into the subway, and then of course there's the foot chase after that. So it goes through a lot of environments and it's a really unique car chase indeed. Then of course there's the Fib HQ bombing scene, and this is a pivotal action scene, not just story-wise, but practically speaking. I mean, interestingly, the explosion itself, 5 players had to place 2 sticky bombs each, so 10 in total, for the explosion to have its effect. When you're a small group of filmmakers, it's rather difficult to get a large group of people together. So getting quite a lot of people together just for one explosion, it was difficult for us because we had to find the players to do so. But we did, and it obviously paid off in the end. The next action sequence is, of course, the Nico and Kathy ambush. I mean, interestingly, this was an action sequence that was rather difficult to do at first because it had to be timed perfectly. Originally, what we were going to have was the car was going to be in motion and it would be hit off the side whilst driving. And as I mentioned, it had to be timed perfectly, and we tried this again and again and again. I think we tried it maybe 10 times or so, and we just couldn't get the timing right. So after multiple failed attempts, we made Nico stop the car at the side of the road, turn and talk to Kathy, and then they get hit off the edge, and that's us being malleable. And this was a film that we really did a lot of that on during our action sequences. The next one, of course, is the car explosion. This is where Nico, of course, drives the car into the ocean and it explodes and he just manages to escape. And now, interestingly, at the time of shooting this film, we met a modder online whilst we were playing on the Ballad of Gay Tony. They kindly offered to help shoot the Machinima for a variety of scenes, and I mean, everything in Alderney was shot with this modder. So things like the modded white cavalcade that you can see, the FIB agent, the red and black shafter, the swift helicopter, all of that was modded into the scene. I think it gave the film a kind of uniqueness towards it. We weren't afraid to kind of push the boundaries, and at the time, do stuff that really wasn't being done in Machinimas in that way, and I kind of like how that turned out. And in terms of the car explosion itself, that also was done in one take. Because when we were driving, it had to be timed perfectly, you see. What had to happen was, you aim the car at the ocean, you gather speed so the car could go into the ocean. You have to jump out at the right time, roll, stop, the car goes into the water upon exploding. It all had to happen at the right time. And we got a great shot of it in the end, and even to this day, I still love the shot we got. Then, of course, we have the downtown shootout in Algonquin. And this was by far the most difficult scene to shoot in the film. The thing that made this most difficult to shoot was every shot taken sent all the nearby AIs into a craze, and multiple takes included us being run over by passing cars and so forth. So we'd shoot for a couple of seconds and then boom, you would get hit by AI, or police would arrive, or something really aggravating to that nature. So this was a scene that wasn't done in one take. We had to rehearse it, we had to practice it, but we managed to get it done in 4 or 5 takes, and in the end I think it was worth it because we got a really good shootout in a really iconic location. Next, of course, it's the Vegero versus the Huntley Sport car chase, and this is a very important car chase, not just to the film, but to the overall franchise. Why? Because it's the introduction of Niko Bellic's signature car, a classic silver Vegero. This car chase, similar to some of our car chases in Bloodgrave actually, was done in one take. It's a very intense, very heavy hitting, almost a car as a weapon type car chase. Nico uses his car as a battering device almost, and he's not afraid to hit Wave's car, which is much larger of course, and he's driving the Huntley Sport. We go through small alleyways, back streets of Alderney, and eventually up into a parking garage. And to this day, I still think this is one of the most iconic car chases in the franchise. Then of course, there are 3 action sequences tied together to make the finale of the film. The hotel shootout, the foot chase in Algonquin, and the helicopter pursuit. Now, some may also notice that it's at this very point of the film that we switch from playing on the Ballad of Gay Tony to the normal GTA 4, and the reason for this is simply we had disc problems. Discs got scratched, and so we couldn't use the Ballad of Gay Tony, sadly. Although I do think in hindsight, it felt appropriate though to end the original era of the Agent 11 franchise on GTA 4, the very game that started off this franchise. In terms of the foot chase, and for myself, this is a rather personal favourite moment in the entire film. I mean, originally we were going to have multiple fire engines, police cars and so forth, all racing down and driving down the famous Star Junction towards the shootout in the hotel, with Nico running down, again, taking that inspiration, that imagery from Skyfall and really injecting it into our film. But we couldn't do this because there simply wasn't enough players. But again, this is my personal favourite moment in the film, mainly because of the music and the climactic nature of the film. It's all building up to this one moment. And then last but not least, like I mentioned, is the helicopter pursuit. And yet again, this was a randomised one-take pursuit. Ewan Ward and myself were piloting the helicopters at this point in the film, and we simply improvised the chase scene, knowing that the Heli Tours was the starting location and the Happiness Islands was the end point. And as long as it was a fast-paced, action-packed sequence to finish off the film, that was all that mattered. And again, we got that in one take, and it was the one that went in the film, obviously. And now we get on to 11 facts about the second wave. These are 11 facts that you might not know about the film, or little tidbits, that stuff that happened during pre-production, production, or post-production, that of course I think are going to be interesting and quite fun to share with you guys. So number 1, there was no script, but there was a complete story outline. Very similar to Bloodgrave, the second wave had no complete script upon entering production. The reason being is, we didn't really know how to write a script at that point, and we were still learning and progressing as amateur filmmakers. However though, the second wave did have a complete story outline. Every scene was planned out, we knew what was happening, what the story was, who the characters were, and all that. We knew the main structure of the film, all the characters, all the minute details. All we didn't have was the dialogue written down. Unlike Bloodgrave, the second wave had a much more structured and organised story behind it. There was no improv in the story. We wouldn't turn up to set and go, right, what's the story today? We already knew what it was. Everything had a beginning, middle and end, and I think that really shows well, because I think the film is much more structured, both editing-wise and story-wise. It's definitely an improvement from Bloodgrave. Secondly, and rather importantly, no more subtitles. It's a very important fact about this film, as after Bloodgrave's poor attempt at subtitles for dialogue, we realised that the second wave had to progress, and so what we did was we used the form of voices in order to develop both character and the quality of the film. Now sadly again, we were quite young at this point, so we were still amateur filmmakers, still learning the ropes if it were, and so artificial voices were used for the first time. Dialogue was actually written in the editing suite, interestingly enough. What we had a rough idea of what the characters would say at certain times, but interestingly, the majority of the voices were done on the day of editing and when we were putting the film together. That was actually a rather common trend, not just in this film, but in upcoming films as well. Sometimes we change dialogue and so forth. But the second wave was definitely a progression. It was definitely the next step forward for KnightHunter Studios, moving from subtitles to artificial voices, which of course would stay in use for another 2 years of filmmaking. The third important fact is, it is the introduction of the declasse Vegero. Think about this. Every major action hero has a signature car. Whether that be James Bond's DB5, Bullett's Mustang Fastback, Dominic Toretto's Dodge Charger, and relating to GTA 5 Machinima's, Jack Cole's Gold Dominator. And so in the second wave, I knew it was time for Niko Bellic to finally get his signature car, the car that's his, the car that you look at and go, that's Niko Bellic's car, that's what that reminds me of. And we couldn't do that in Bloodgrave because simply we had too many vehicles, there were so many car chases, nothing was iconic enough. Now interestingly, the plan was for Nico to drive a Piot. And you can see this in the original teaser trailer for the second wave. If you go back and have a look, there are certain shots when Nico is driving a Piot. But sadly, technical complications meant that this could not happen, and so we had to rethink, we had to redesign, come up with a new idea. But we did get the next best thing. We wanted a classical muscle car that was fast, it looked awesome, but was cheap and accessible. Anyone can own it. And that is where the declasse Vegero came in. And so for the film's primary car chase, the Vegero versus the Huntley Sport, we managed to find a beautiful silver Vegero and in one take, remember, completed a fantastic and intense car chase. And since then, the Vegero has been the car for Agents 11. It's his personal ride and it's appeared in every film after the second wave, bar of course Grand Theft Auto Forevermore. The fourth fact is that the film was shot with a simple HD camera. We knew from Bloodgrave that the actual quality of the film, the image itself, had to increase in quality if we were going to continue making and progressing the Agents 11 franchise and us as actual amateur filmmakers. Still, we were young and we had no budget at all to make the film, so we ended up using a simple HD camera. The picture quality was certainly an improvement from Bloodgrave, capturing brighter colours and clearer images, but of course it certainly wasn't up to scratch with what we would later use in the franchise, which of course is game captured devices. Now annoyingly, a rather interesting fact is, when you record with an HD camera, it actually picked up both audio in the game and audio within the room itself. And so from the moment I called action, it would have to be complete silence until I yelled cut. It was an odd and rather frankly difficult shooting and directing style, but it taught us that if the franchise was to continue and we were to grow as filmmakers, we would have to continue learning the basics of machinima making and invest in better recording devices. Another interesting fact is that the second wave was written with Grand Theft Auto 5 in mind. I just want you to cast your mind back to early 2013. Most of you watching are probably Grand Theft Auto 5 fans, In 2013, you knew that Grand Theft Auto 5, the highly anticipated follow-up to GTA 4, was due to come out later that year in September, after so many delays. And after Bloodgrave released in December of 2012, we immediately got writing its sequel, The Second Wave. And we kept in mind the entire time that the GTA franchise itself would be changing and advancing when GTA 5 released. I knew that continuing the franchise on GTA 4 would be a mistake nonetheless. With GTA 5 right around the corner, and all the new possibilities for machinima making that it would bring, it made sense that if we, as a channel and as a filmmaking group, were to grow and advance, we should do so on the next generation of gaming. It was definitely an executive and commercial decision, but it benefited the story immensely as it gave us a brilliant way to transition into the new world of Grand Theft Auto, whilst maintaining a consistent and believing story in the second wave. The title, Agent 11, is another interesting fact that people might not be aware of, is that this is technically the first film Nico receives his Agent 11 title. It's the first time he's referred as Agent 11, it is the first time he actually is Agent 11. As some background, the FIB in our universe, alongside its other duties, has a classified agent program. A program of elite, hardened and highly skilled assassins who eliminate threats to America, both foreign and domestic. Only the very best are granted entry as an agent, and Niko Bellic was one of them. The title Agent 11 just came to us naturally. We wanted a short, snappy, memorable, but mysterious title for our version of Niko Bellic, and Agent 11 just stuck around, and that, in the writing suite, is what he became known as. The next fact is, from iMovie app to Windows Movie Maker. Yes, sadly, this is true, it is a complete fact. Again, after Bloodgrave, we wanted to expand our horizons and continue learning and growing as filmmakers, and part of that included switching up our editing software and trying something new and a bit more advanced. This time then, we had to use computer software. And since there was no budget for the film, remember we were still relatively young at this point, we used something completely free and easy to use, Windows Movie Maker. And to this day, I still look back and ask why and how we managed to put the movie together on there, and it definitely does show. The editing is okay in some areas and it's quite off in others, but the film itself from an editing standpoint certainly does hold up better compared to Bloodgrave, and that is partly down to using new movie editing software. The next fact is, Skyfall changed everything. It is no secret that us at KnightHunter Studios are huge Bond fans. I mean, I myself have been a Bond fan since I was a little kid. And Skyfall, the 23rd Bond film, and which had just released in cinemas in November of 2012, heavily influenced the making, writing, editing, and overall production of the second wave, and actually ended up changing everything about us as filmmakers. If you watch the second wave, you can actually see its influence, from the very obvious soundtrack usage direct from Skyfall, to the more implicit story points, such as the FIB building being attacked and the rogue FIB agent getting revenge on his country. These story points were a direct influence from Skyfall. I remember once the second wave was released, us at KnightHunter Studios began writing the sequel to it, which was to be set on GTA 5 of course, and I kept reminding the writing team, remember how hyped we were for Bond to return to the screen in Skyfall. We needed that energy back for the second wave sequel, and so part of the reason the Agent 11 franchise is still going 8 years later after its conception is due to Skyfall, the Bond franchise as a whole as it were, and the immeasurable joy and excitement and escapism we as filmmakers personally get out of it, and I know that many of you do as well when you watch our machinimas, and we are always hugely grateful for that. The ninth fact is, there was a change in directing action. I mentioned this earlier on when I was explaining and giving some tidbits about the action sequences, but Bloodgrave, as we previously explored, was a film that was very car chase heavy and relied a lot on improvisation during action sequences. Although this created unique results, sometimes it didn't work, and you could feel the emptiness in the action sequences itself sometimes when you watch them. In the second wave, my approach was to direct and construct the action sequences in a much more rigid and structured manner. The opening car chase, for instance, was rehearsed for 2 weeks straight. Every day, Ewan Ward, our stunt director and a longtime friend of mine, Ewan Ward and myself drove the route in the cars and practiced it to get it right, and we did this over and over and over. And then it only took us 3 attempts during shooting to get the perfect take, which is of course the one you see in the film. This especially came true during the finale of the film. the hotel shootout, to the foot chase, to the helicopter chase, and finally to the execution of Albert Wave. This entire sequence lasts roughly for 10 minutes, and you can tell what's happening. The geography is a lot clearer, and the action as a whole is smoother and more contained. And these of course are examples of us changing our direction style and how we approach this film compared to Bloodgrave. The 10th fact of course is, Niko Bellic will return. This is the first film in the franchise to end with Niko Bellic will return, which is both a literal device to tease the next movie, and is also an Easter egg and a callback to the Bond films, who of course originated the James Bond will return at the end of their end credits. And of course, this is something that we have adopted when we've kind of brought on. This is us kind of confirming our love and our passion for the Bond franchise and its huge influence on us as filmmakers. And this of course, as I mentioned, was the first time it was shown in the Agent 11 franchise. Finally, the original car chase idea. If you look back at the official teaser trailer for the second wave, a particular shot appears where a helicopter is hovering alongside the multi-storey car park. An explosion then erupts and the helicopter crashes to the ground. Now this was in the original car chase that we had planned. Originally, Nico was driving home in his Vegero and, as did happen in the film, Albert Wave ambushed him and tried to take him out. However, in the original plan for the car chase, Albert Wave called in helicopter support, and Nico would have lost Wave, who was chasing him by car, whilst being pursued by the helicopter. The helicopter in question would be firing miniguns at Nico, and Nico would of course try and evade it as the helicopter was trying to kill him. Now it was a great idea and I wish we did it, but due to complications with getting the right amount of players on to actually perform the car chase with the helicopter proved to be difficult. And we had a deadline for completing production. So Ewan Ward and myself did it the old-fashioned way. We start at X location and we end at Y location and make it a pure, simple, intense car chase. And that is of course what we got as the end result. So that concludes the behind the scenes recap of Grand Theft Auto The Second Wave, the second film in the Agent 11 franchise. Thank you very much for watching this quite lengthy but detailed recap. It's a very important film. As I mentioned, it's the transition from GTA 4 into GTA 5, and it was a film that really showed our progression from Bloodgrave and us learning and getting the ropes again of machinima making, and this would of course happen in every film up until the present day. So again guys, thank you very much for watching. If you did like our content, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and to follow us at Twitter, and our Twitter handle is of course at KnightHunter2xk. Thank you very much for watching guys, and we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.